I was looking at a photograph of my daughter when I found the texts. She was 3 weeks old. She was asleep in the bassinet 6 feet away from me, making the small, involuntary sounds that newborns make, the sounds that had already rearranged something permanent in my chest. Marcus had left his phone on the kitchen counter when he went to shower, and it had lit up with a notification. And I glanced at it the way you glance at anything that lights up, reflexively, without thinking, without any premonition at all. The preview showed 7 words before the screen went dark. I keep thinking about the night I put my daughter's photograph down. The phone was locked, but the notification was still visible if I picked it up and tilted it. I don't know why I did that. I think some part of me was still hoping it was something innocent, something that 7 words couldn't possibly mean what they sounded like. I tilted the phone. The contact name was a single letter, K. And I stood in my kitchen at 6:40 in the morning, 3 weeks postpartum, with my daughter's sounds coming from the other room and my husband's shower running down the hall, and I understood something that I would spend the next several months trying to understand. Kay was my sister. Her name is Kira. She had been pregnant with my daughter for 9 months. She had been in my home, at my table, at my doctor's appointments, in my delivery room. She had held my hand during the transfer and cried happy tears when the test came back positive, and sent me voice messages at midnight when the baby was kicking because she knew I'd want to feel connected to every moment I was missing. And she had been sleeping with my husband the entire time. I need to stop here for a second. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. I share stories like this every week, real ones, the kind that don't get told at dinner parties, and I need you to stay because this one is nowhere near over. And drop a comment when you're done. Tell me where you're listening from because this community is genuinely everywhere and I want to know where you are. Okay. Let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand what was built before you can understand what it meant to watch it come apart. My name is Rachel. I'm 34 now. At the time the story starts, I was 31, living in a 4-bedroom house in a suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio, married to a man I'd been with for 7 years and loved in the deep, habitual, bone-certain way that you love someone who has been present through everything. Marcus was a structural engineer. I was a high school English teacher. We were not glamorous. We were solid, which I had always valued more than glamorous, and which I now understand I may have confused with safe. We started trying for a baby when I was 28. This is not an unusual story, the trying, I mean. 1 in 8 couples, the statistics say, as if statistics help when you're sitting in a fertility clinic waiting room for the 3rd time in a year, holding a folder of test results you've memorized, looking at a laminated poster about embryo quality, like the answer to your grief might be somewhere in the diagram. 3 years. 3 IVF cycles, 2 miscarriages. 1 at 9 weeks, 1 at 11. And if you've been through that, you know that the second one doesn't hurt less because you've practiced. It hurts differently, deeper, more informed. Marcus was present through all of it. I want to say that clearly because the story I'm about to tell could make it sound like he was always what he became, and he wasn't. During those 3 years, he held me through things that required real holding. He came to every appointment. He gave me injections when my hands shook too much to do them myself. He cried at the 11-week loss in a way that was not performed, private, turned away from me slightly. The cry of someone who had been hoping as hard as I had and didn't know what to do with the collapse of that hope. I loved him for all of it. I trusted him completely. Looking back at that trust now is one of the more disorienting experiences of my adult life. like looking at a photograph of a place you loved that has since burned down. The place was real, the love was real, the burning was also real. Kira is 2 years younger than me. She's always been the more striking of the two of us, not in a way that ever felt threatening between us, or so I believed. She's taller, more naturally social, the kind of person who makes friends in checkout lines and remembers the names of waitresses. She went to school for nursing, worked in a maternity ward for 4 years, which she always said was the best job she could imagine, and which is one of those details that, in retrospect, takes on a different color. We were close. I mean, genuinely close, not just politely close in the way that sisters can be. We talked almost every day. She was the first person I called after each miscarriage, before my mother, before my best friend, before anyone. She knew the specific shape of my grief around the fertility journey in the way that only someone who has sat with you through the details can know it. She knew the names I'd chosen and then set aside. She knew which clinic smelled like antiseptic and which one had the kind receptionist who always remembered my name. She knew everything. When she offered to be our surrogate, it arrived as the most natural thing in the world. We were at my kitchen table, the same kitchen where I would later stand with her text on Marcus's screen. It was a Sunday afternoon in late October, and she'd come for lunch, and we'd been talking about the third cycle and what came next and whether we were ready to consider other options. She had her coffee cup in both hands, and she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "I've been thinking about something, and I need you to hear me out before you react." She said she'd been researching gestational surrogacy. She said she'd spoken to a doctor she trusted at the hospital. She said her body had proven it could carry a pregnancy. She'd had a pregnancy scare at 25 that had resolved on its own, and the tests after had confirmed everything was functioning normally. She said, "Your eggs are viable, Rachel. Marcus's results are fine. The issue has been your uterus, and we both know it. I have a uterus. Let me use it." I looked at her across my kitchen table, and I didn't say anything for a long time. Then I started crying, and she came around the table and held me, and I thought, this is what it means to have a sister. I want you to hold that moment. I want you to hold it because I held it for a long time, through every difficult conversation that came after, through the legal process, through the pregnancy, through the birth. I held that moment as evidence of who she was, who we were to each other. I held it up against everything I would later learn and tried to make it make sense. And the honest answer is that I still can't entirely. I think she meant it. I think the offer was genuine. I also think that what happened after was also real. And both things being true is the part that keeps me up at night. Marcus's reaction was complicated. He needed time, he said. He needed to think about it. He had concerns, the emotional implications, what it would mean for their relationship as brother and sister-in-law, whether he could separate the biological reality of the situation from the family dynamic. He said all the right things. He framed his hesitation as care for everyone involved. He ultimately said yes after about 3 weeks of conversations, and he said yes in a way that seemed considered and final, and I believed him. I believed him because I loved him. I believed him because I had no reason not to. I believed him because the alternative required a version of events I could not have assembled from the evidence I had at the time. The legal process took 4 months. We worked with a surrogacy attorney who had done this before many times and who walked us through every contract clause with a patience I was grateful for. The contract covered everything: compensation, medical decisions, contact during pregnancy, legal parentage, what happened in various scenarios we hoped would never occur. Kira signed it. We all sat in a conference room and signed it, and the attorney shook our hands and said he always loved these arrangements, that family surrogacy done right was one of the most beautiful things he got to be part of. The first transfer didn't take. The second one did. I found out on a Wednesday morning in March. I was at school between first and second period, And Kira texted me a photo of the test. 2 lines, clear and undeniable, and I sat down on the floor of my classroom before the second period students arrived, and I put my face in my hands, and I breathed until I stopped shaking. I had been afraid to hope. I had trained myself across 3 years and 2 losses to approach good news with a kind of protective distance. But sitting on the floor of my classroom, I let myself hope, just for those few minutes before the bell rang, fully and without protection. And it felt like stepping outside after a very long time indoors. The pregnancy was textbook. Every appointment, every number, every measurement. Kira was healthy and careful and present in exactly the way I had always known she would be. She sent me updates constantly, photos of the ultrasounds, videos of the heartbeat, voice messages at whatever hour the baby moved, because she knew I'd want them immediately. She came to most appointments. When she couldn't, she FaceTimed me from the waiting room so I could hear the heartbeat in real time from my classroom. She and Marcus saw each other more during this period than they ever had before. That was natural. She was carrying his child. There were practicalities. There were times I couldn't be there, and he was. I registered this and filed it under normal. There were moments I noticed things I didn't examine. Moments I chose, without knowing I was choosing, not to look too closely. There was an evening in June, she was about 20 weeks along, when I came home from a work event to find them in the kitchen together. Nothing was wrong with the picture. They were just talking, standing at the counter, and when I came in, they both moved slightly, repositioned, just fractionally, and Kira picked up her wine glass with an ease that was almost right, but had something practiced in it. I noticed the repositioning. I clocked it as a unit of information and immediately put it somewhere I didn't look. You know that feeling when you know something and you're not ready to know it? When the evidence is accumulating somewhere in you and you're keeping it in a room with the door closed because you can't afford what opening it would cost? That's where I was from about June until early September. The room was there, the door was there. I kept walking past it. There was a weekend in August when Marcus went to help Kira install a crib in her spare room, her mother's old crib that needed reassembling, he said. He was gone for 5 hours. He came home smelling like her perfume, which is a distinctive smell, sandalwood and something citrusy, a perfume she'd worn for years and that I'd always loved on her. He said she'd given him a hug when he left. I stood in the kitchen and I thought about that explanation for about 30 seconds. I made dinner. I closed the door. Our daughter was born on November 14th, a Thursday. She arrived at 6:17 in the evening after 14 hours of labor that Kira endured with a composure I have never stopped being in awe of, despite everything. I was in the room. I held Kira's hand through the worst of it, and at one point she looked at me with this expression, exhausted and something else, something I read as love and now read as the specific look of someone carrying a secret through a moment that makes secrets almost impossible to hold. And she said, "You're going to be such a good mom." They placed my daughter in my arms at 6:22. Her name is Nora. She had Marcus's nose and my mother's eyebrows, and she was the most complete thing I had ever held in my life. I stood there with her in my arms, and I felt something shift inside me that I understood was permanent, a tectonic thing, deep and irreversible. The love that arrived when they put her in my arms was not the love I had been anticipating for 3 years. It was bigger. It had no edges. 3 weeks later, I was looking at her photograph when my husband's phone lit up. I didn't confront Marcus that morning. I want to be honest about that. I didn't do the thing that you're supposed to do, the immediate, clear-eyed confrontation. I put his phone back on the counter exactly where it had been. I fed Nora. I made coffee. I moved through the morning with a precision that I now recognize as the specific behavior of someone whose nervous system is in shock and has decided, without conscious input, that survival requires the appearance of normalcy. Marcus came out of the shower and kissed my cheek and held Nora for 20 minutes before work, and I watched him hold her, and I thought about 7 words in a single letter, and I kept my face arranged. The thing about shock is that it's not dramatic. That's the part no one tells you. It doesn't look like screaming or throwing things. It looks like washing dishes. It looks like sending work emails. It looks like sitting in the school parking lot for 15 minutes before you can go in because your hands are on the steering wheel and you can't remember why you're supposed to let go of it. I spent 4 days in that state. On the 5th day, I called my friend Dana. Not because she was my closest friend. She was, but that's not why I called her. I called her because she was a family law attorney, and I needed someone who could hold 2 things at once: the friendship part and the "what do I need to know before I say anything to anyone" part. We met at her office on a Thursday afternoon. I laid it out for her in the order I'd assembled it: the text, the contact name, the June evening in the kitchen, the August afternoon with the crib, the smell of Kira's perfume on Marcus's shirt. I said it all in a flat, organized voice that Dana would later tell me she'd recognized as the voice of someone who had been rehearsing for days. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to not be offended by the question." I said, "Okay." She said, "Do you want to know? Before you do anything else, do you actually want to confirm this?" I understood what she was asking. I understood that knowing had a cost, that certainty was a door that only opened one direction. I sat with the question for maybe 10 seconds. I said, "I need to know about Nora." Dana nodded. She said we should talk about a paternity test, not because she thought there was reason to doubt. She said that carefully, gently, but because in the legal landscape of what I might be walking into, certainty of Nora's parentage was protective, for me and for Nora both. I drove home that afternoon understanding that my life was about to divide into before and after, and that the line of division had already been crossed. I was just now walking back to find exactly where it was. I requested a DNA test through my daughter's pediatrician, framing it as a routine request I'd seen mentioned in a surrogacy forum. The pediatrician, who was thorough and kind and asked no intrusive questions, swabbed Nora's cheek at her 4-week appointment. I submitted Marcus's DNA through a secondary route that Dana had advised, using a coffee cup he'd left in my car. I sent the samples to a laboratory that Dana's office had used before. The results came back in 8 days. Nora was Marcus's daughter. I know I should feel relief at that, and I do. I completely do. She is his. She is mine. Her parentage is what we were told it was. But sitting at the kitchen table reading that result, the relief lasted approximately 45 seconds before something else took over. Because the confirmation of Nora's parentage was not the same as the erasure of what had happened. The baby was his, the affair was still real, the 9 months were still real, the entire architecture of the last year was still built on something I hadn't known was under it. I sat with the result for 2 days. Then I went to confront my sister. I drove to Kira's apartment on a Saturday morning when Marcus was with a college friend, a plan he'd had for weeks, one I had noted and waited for without telling him I was waiting. I drove there in the kind of cold clarity that I think the body produces when it has run out of other options. No radio, no mental rehearsal, just the drive and the knowing and the arriving. She answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair up, holding a coffee mug. Her face when she saw mine did something I will never forget. Not guilt, exactly, or not only guilt. something more like resignation, like someone who has been waiting for a knock on a specific door for a long time and has finally heard it. She stepped back and let me in without saying anything. I stood in her living room. She stood across from me. I looked at her face, the face I had known my whole life, the face I had seen in the delivery room, the face that had been in my kitchen and at my table and at my doctor's appointments. And I said, "Tell me the truth." She looked at the window. Then she looked at me. She said, "How much do you know?" I said, "Tell me the truth, Kira." She set her coffee mug down on the end table. She sat on the arm of her couch like her legs had decided to be done. And then she told me. It had started 6 months before the transfer, before she was even officially our surrogate, before the contracts, before the attorney, before any of it. They had been at a family gathering, my parents' anniversary dinner, and there had been a conversation, and then a text, and then something that accelerated in the way these things apparently do when two people are deciding not to stop themselves. By the time she made the offer to carry our baby, it had been happening for 2 months. I stood in her living room and I felt the floor tilt slightly. The offer, the beautiful, generous, "this is what sisters do" offer, made while she was already in his bed. I said, "Did you offer to be our surrogate because of the affair?" Long silence. "No," she said. "I offered because—" She stopped. Tried again. "I offered because I love you and you needed help, and I thought—" Another stop. "You thought what?" She looked at her hands. "I thought I could keep them separate. I thought the offer was real and the other thing was what?" She didn't finish. I said, "Did it continue during the pregnancy?" She didn't answer immediately, which was an answer. I said, "While you were carrying my daughter?" She said, "Rachel." I said, "While I was calling you at midnight because I missed feeling her move and you were the only one who could put the phone on your stomach so I could hear." She said, "It stopped at 6 months. I ended it at 6 months." As if that were a different kind of thing, as if 6 months were a mitigation. I looked at my sister and I felt something happen that I'd never felt before. Not anger, not grief, something quieter and more permanent than either. The specific sensation of a thing leaving you that you had not known you were holding. Years and years of accumulated trust, the weight of a shared life, the particular safety of being known by your sibling. I felt it go. Not all at once, more like a slow leak discovering an opening. I said, "Does he know you ended it?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Does he know I'm here?" She said, "No." I said, "Okay." And then I picked up my bag and I left. I didn't slam the door. I closed it behind me with the same ordinary quietness I would use on any other day leaving any other place. And I drove to the park 3 blocks from my house, and I sat in my car and I looked at the duck pond through the windshield, and I stayed there for 2 hours without moving while my phone sat face down on the passenger seat full of missed calls from Marcus, who had come home early and found me gone, and clearly understood from some context I hadn't provided that the thing he'd been waiting for had arrived. I came home after the park. That surprised him, I think. I'm not sure what he expected. A separation in progress, bags packed, my mother involved, some version of the expected scene. What he got was me coming through the door at 3 in the afternoon and going to Nora's room and picking her up from her nap and sitting in the nursing chair with her. Not nursing, just holding her for a long time. He stood in the doorway of her room. He didn't say anything. After a while, I said, without looking at him, "Sit down, Marcus." He sat on the floor of our daughter's room with his back against the wall. I sat in the chair with Nora. The mobile above the crib was still going slowly, the one with the little felt stars. I had bought it at a shop in the Short North, I remembered exactly, on a Saturday 3 months into the pregnancy when I'd let myself finally shop for the nursery. I said, "I know about Kira." He said, "I know." I said, "Tell me when it started." He told me. Same timeline as Kira, more or less. He said it started as something he'd convinced himself was manageable, which is the kind of sentence that sounds like it means something until you examine it and find it means nothing at all. He said he'd ended it, or she'd ended it, they'd both agreed, before the 3rd trimester. He said he was sorry. He said sorry several times in several configurations, and I let them arrive and land and go nowhere, because sorry in that room at that moment was not a thing that had anywhere useful to go. At some point, Nora fell back asleep in my arms. The mobile slowed to a stop. Marcus was still on the floor. I said, "I need you to go stay somewhere else tonight." He said, "Okay." He said, "Are we?" I said, "Not tonight, Marcus. I can't answer that tonight." He left. I stayed in the nursing chair with our sleeping daughter until my back hurt too much to stay, and then I put her down and went to my room and lay on top of the covers and stared at the ceiling, and I did not sleep until almost 4 in the morning, and when I slept, I did not dream. The weeks after that were the hardest kind of hard. Not dramatic, not crisis level, just daily and grinding and relentless. Marcus moved to a hotel for 2 weeks. I told my mother a version of events that was true without being complete, because I was not ready for my family's reaction to become something else I had to manage. I called favors to Dana and to 2 other people who helped me understand what my legal and practical options were. I told one person the full truth during that period, my friend Wendy, who had known me since before Marcus, who had sat with me through every fertility appointment, who had held my hand in the parking lot of the clinic after the 2nd miscarriage and not said a single word because she'd understood that words weren't what I needed. I called her on a Tuesday evening and told her everything in one long, unbroken telling, and when she finished, she said, "What do you need right now, this minute?" I said, "I need someone to just be appalled with me for a few minutes." She said, "Oh, I am absolutely appalled." And then we stayed on the phone for 2 hours, and she was appalled and funny and present, and it was the first time in 3 weeks I'd felt anything other than the specific weight of being the only person in the room who fully knew what the room contained. Marcus and I tried counseling, 8 sessions with a therapist who specialized in infidelity recovery, a woman named Dr. Fallon who had a very calm voice and a plant on her windowsill that looked like it had survived a great deal. I went into those sessions genuinely trying. I'm saying that because I think I deserve to say it. I didn't go through the motions. I actually tried to find the path through, to understand what had fractured and whether the fracture was repairable. What I found across those 8 sessions was that I couldn't locate the version of us that existed before. I kept reaching for it and finding only the other version, the one with the secret underneath it, the one where his hand and mine at a doctor's appointment had another meaning I wasn't aware of, where the 3 weeks postpartum before I found the text had been weeks in which he knew and I had not. The asymmetry of that, the fact that I had been living one story while he had been living a different one in the same moments, kept dismantling whatever I tried to build. After the 8th session, in the car on the way home, Marcus reached across the console and put his hand on mine, and I sat with his hand on mine for about a block before I moved my hand away, not angrily, just clearly. He said, I know. I said, I know you know. We filed for divorce 4 months after I found the text. It was not contentious. We'd both been through enough that the last thing either of us had energy for was a fight over who got the dining room table. Dana handled most of it. Nora stayed with me. Marcus had her every weekend and certain evenings. The arrangement was written in terms that both a judge and a small child could understand. Kira and I did not speak for 11 months. My mother knew by the end of it. I told her the full truth in the spring, sitting in her kitchen with the window open and the particular smell of my mother's house in warm weather, something floral and also coffee-tinged and also just home. A smell I've never been able to fully separate from the feeling of being safe. My mother listened without interrupting, which was not characteristic of her. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I don't know how to be her mother right now. I said, I'm not asking you to stop. She said, I know, I'm just telling you. We sat with that for a while. The window let in a sound of someone mowing a lawn 2 houses over. My mother refilled my coffee without asking, the way she has always done, and that small, familiar gesture was enough to break something open in me, just briefly, just enough that she could see it, and she reached across the table and held my hand, and I let her. The first time I saw Kira after 11 months was at our cousin's wedding in October. I had known she'd be there and had decided to go anyway because I was not going to let the reorganization of my life around her absence become a permanent architecture. She was at the far end of the reception hall when I arrived. She saw me immediately. I could see the specific way her body absorbed the sight of me. I didn't go to her, but I didn't leave. I stayed for 3 hours, talked to family I loved, danced with my cousin who had been in my corner throughout all of this, and when the evening was ending, Kira appeared beside me, near the coat check, quiet, waiting. I looked at her. She said, I'm not going to say I'm sorry again because you've heard it and it doesn't touch what I did. I said, no, it doesn't. She said, I miss you. I know I don't have the right to say that. I stood with my coat in my hands and I looked at my sister, my younger sister, who had driven me to the hospital when I had the first miscarriage because Marcus was out of town, who had sat in the waiting room for 4 hours and then held me in the parking lot after, who had offered her body to carry my child, who had also done the other thing, the thing that existed alongside the first thing and could not be separated from it. I said, I know you miss me. I said, I miss you too. I miss who I thought you were. She looked like she'd been hit. I said it gently, not to wound her, just because it was the truest thing available. The grief I had for Kira was as real as the grief I had for my marriage. Different shape, but the same weight. We didn't hug. We stood there for a moment, and then I put my coat on, and I said goodnight, and I walked to my car. Nora is 2.5 now. She says approximately 40 words and is aggressively, exhaustingly curious about everything. And the love I have for her is the most uncomplicated thing in my life. It has never been complicated by what I know. I want to say that clearly because I think people assume it must color my relationship with her. That every time I look at her, I see the circumstances, the betrayal, the 9 months I didn't fully know about. It's not like that. She is just herself, my daughter, the person who calls me mama and falls asleep on my chest and has a laugh that sounds like bells dropped on a hard floor. She is entirely, completely her own thing. What I know is separate from what she is. I've worked hard to keep it that way. I'll work harder when she's old enough for the work to matter. Marcus is present father. I want to say that too, because the story of what he did to me is not the full story of who he is as a parent. I watch him with her on exchange days, and I see someone who has taken the wreckage of what happened and tried to build something careful from it. We are not friends. We are not enemies. We are the parents of a small person who needs us both to be functional adults, and most days we manage it. Kira and I are in something I can only call early. We have had 4 conversations in the past year. Careful ones, short ones, the kind where you're both aware that you're standing on something that might not hold your weight yet, and you're testing it before you commit. I don't know where it goes. I'm not trying to decide in advance. My mother lights candles for both of her daughters on Sunday evenings, which I know because she told me, and which I found devastating and beautiful in equal measure. I went back to teaching last September. First period, 8th grade, American literature. The first day I stood in front of a new class, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph exactly, but a specific sense of continuity, of I am still here, that I needed more than I'd known. I have the same classroom, same window, same slightly broken blind that doesn't go all the way up, different group of faces. On my windowsill, I have a plant. I'm not the kind of person who thinks in symbols generally, but I will tell you that I bought it deliberately, that I chose it because succulents are low maintenance and stubborn and difficult to kill, and that it is on its 8th consecutive month of survival. And I find it unreasonably satisfying every morning when I come in and it's still there, still green, still entirely indifferent to everything that has happened in the room around it. There are things I know now that I did not know when this started. I know that love and betrayal are not opposites, that they can share the same person, the same hands, the same years. I know that the most sophisticated cons are not the ones built from nothing, but the ones built from something real, decorated with genuine emotion and populated with actual history. I know that the room with the closed door always collects interest. And I know that my daughter, who does not yet know any of this, will one day need me to have survived it cleanly enough to tell her the truth in a way that doesn't wound her more than it clarifies. I'm working toward that. Some days I feel the distance closing. I drove past the clinic last month, the third one, the good one, the one with the kind receptionist who always remembered my name. I wasn't going there, just passing. I slowed slightly without meaning to, sat at the red light for an extra few seconds looking at the building. Then the light changed. I drove on. If you made it to the end, thank you for staying. This was not an easy story to tell, and it was not an easy one to listen to, and I know that. If any part of it found you where you are, the fertility piece, the betrayal piece, the having to rebuild yourself from materials you didn't choose piece, I want you to know that I see you, and I know how long those particular nights are. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I mean it every time. And subscribe if you haven't. I'll be here next week with another story, another true one, another person who went through something and came out the other side still standing. The standing is the whole thing. It really is.